Hello and welcome to stage 5 of the Tour de l'Avenir. A slightly earlier start today due to the soaring temperatures heading up into the mid to late 30s at the moment. So a 2-hour revised time slot for the race today as we travel from La Tour de Salvagny down again, travelling in a southeastern direction into the Savoie to Lac d'Aiguebelette. Absolutely beautiful location for the finish today, and as you can see, 66.2 kilometres to go. Just passed through the first intermediate sprint of the day, and we have a sizable move out in front, and the chase behind, as you can see, being carried out by the blue of Italy, who aren't represented in the move. France are there, Switzerland also relaying, and just a little bit further back in the yellow jersey, Simon Dalby of Denmark, following yesterday's explosive stage. Another fantastic stage on the board. That was won by Fabian Christian of Switzerland. Just clips off with a couple of kilometres to go. Caught the rider who'd been away for a lap or so on the finishing circuit. Yesterday's stage also reduced in distance because of the very high temperatures, well into the 40s. Isaac Del Toro finishing in second place, just ahead of Lucas Nurikar. And the general classification, as I mentioned, led by Simon Dalby. Heading into this stage, Matthias Randel of France, equal on time with his teammate Axel Huen in third. Then we've got Pierre Thierry at 22 seconds. The stage winner, Jan Christian, there in fifth place. So, today's stage, warm, a hilly finale, a very fast opening few kilometres that lead us to the outskirts of the lake. Then we have two categorised climbs on the run-in to the line, which come within the last 10 k's. The Col de la Crusil, and finishing off with the Col du Terreau before the plummet down to the finish. It is a fast and furious finish. In fact, 500 metres to go, they're still descending. Then a flat finish by the beautiful lake, surrounded by the mountains. And we will finish this race in the Savoie region over the next few days. But this is the situation up in front. 12 riders, the best of which on general classification is Spain's Ivan Romeo. He's at 58 seconds, just sat there, number 73. Also in the move, Alex Segard of Belgium, Oded Kogut of Israel, Artem Schmidt is there for the United States of America. Liam Walsh of Australia is also in the mix as well. He was first across the line at the opening and the only intermediate sprint of the day. Points there counting towards the points green jersey classification. Robert Donaldson is also there from Great Britain. We have a rider that we've been very familiar with in breakaways so far in this year's Tour de l'Avenir. That is Anders Foldager of Denmark. He's up in front, just out of the saddle there. Two from Germany, Pierre-Pascal Kup and Tim Tom Teutenberg. Also two representatives from the Netherlands as well, Thibaut Del Grosso and Pepin Reinderink, the under-23 national road race champion, who featured in the break yesterday but was caught in the closing kilometres. Ivan Romeo, who already mentioned, and the final rider in the move is Zacharias Kolla Lulland of Norway. So a strong move, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. As I said, Ivan Romeo at the moment has a 1 minute and 30 second lead in the virtual classification, and all is set fair for another scintillating finale here at the Tour de l'Avenir. And to run the rule over the riders again today after an exhilarating finale yesterday is Jens Decker. Jens, every day has been impressively exciting, unpredictable racing, and we've got another aggressive day today, and this move looks very strong, and it's got a nice lead as well, 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's a really strong group with a decent lead, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and we only see about 3 riders working at the front of the peloton. We saw just an Italian rider completely blowing up already in this heat. 3 riders against that big group in front. It's going to be a tall order to close that down if no one else comes up to work.
It certainly is. We're sitting back at the moment. They're pretty happy with the situation. They don't appear to be putting anybody at the front at the moment. There is a close-up of our race leader, Simon Dalby. They've got Anders Foldager in the move. Ivan Romeo, as I said, is the best placed rider in the breakaway. He poses the biggest threat. And the next is actually Thibaut Del Grosso, if my calculations are correct. He's at 2:49. Pepin Reinderink at 3:10. And the rest of the riders quite a way down in the general classification. And that was perhaps why this break coalesced relatively easily But I am a little bit surprised that a couple of the key teams have missed this split, particularly Italy and France as well. They've got Matthias Rondel in the best young riders jersey. They've got two riders up there on the general classification in third and fourth on the GC. A little bit surprised that France and Italy have missed this one. It's now forcing them to chase.
Yeah, they apparently just weren't paying enough attention when this move went. It was quite a chaotic start again, just like we saw yesterday. It didn't take as long, but it's still a lot of attacks kind of flying left and right. And yeah, just this group went off the front, and a couple teams missed it, namely Switzerland, France, and Italy. They've missed this move, and they're having to work at the front of the peloton. But again, difficult to close this down. This heat, and it's going to have an effect, but just that group working together. We did see a couple of riders not really willing to work in that front group. I think it was Alex Eghard who was shaking his head to Ivan Romeo, who wanted him to pull through. So that might be an early indication that the cooperation is not as good as it could be in this front group, but so many riders are working together. You see that sort of echelon kind of style formation. They're working well together, well enough anyway to go a lot faster than those three riders who are just doing like 30-second turns on the front of the peloton.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one that we've seen Ivan Romeo not actually working. Everybody else in the moves happy to roll along, and you'd have thought, unless he's had a little bit of, he's been instructed not to work, that it might be a good idea just to roll through. The other riders, no threat on most of the other riders in the break, in fact, no threat on the GC. Segart's at 9.27. Artem Schmidt at 11.24. Rob Donaldson at 9.25. Both of the Germans at Kupp at 8 minutes. Tutenberg at 3.34. Foldhagen now a very distant 20.31, and Lolland at 12 minutes and 36 seconds. So there is only one rider in that move who poses a threat, but it's not just the GC here, is it? Clearly, Denmark are happy. They've got representation in the front. I mean, while we're talking about Denmark, I mean, they've ridden the blinding race so far. They've got a couple of stage wins. They're in the jersey. They've used some pretty unorthodox tactics, but right now, it's playing into their hands. They've ridden almost the perfect race so far.
Yeah, Denmark not maybe the biggest favourites for the overall. Simon Dalby is someone who we expect to go for the top 10, but not someone we necessarily expect to win this race overall. And they've managed to shrug off that responsibility of chasing once again by putting someone in the break. So they've played it really well.
Yeah, they certainly have. There is the finish line. They'll be crossing the finish line probably in about an hour and a half's time, 1 hour 20, 25. But we've got a couple of big climbs to come right at the back end of the race as we continue to see our breakaway rolling through. There is Anders Foldhagen, a real talent, moving to the World Tour next year. Just behind him, the man we saw in the breakaway, Pipin Reindering, sits at 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Germany represented with Kupp and Tim Tom Teutenberg. Got to say it, what a brilliant name. Tim Tom Teutenberg, must be my new name, favourite name in cycling. But still sat at the back, Ivan Romeo. This intrigues me. Why on earth do you think he's sat right at the back? He's got the most to gain. Do you think he's just happy not to work, thinking of the others, or do you think he thinks the brake's going to get caught? Quite an interesting one, because there's, again, pretty disruptive tactics here.
Yeah, I think in this case it looks like he's just annoyed that there's no one there handing him bottles. He was trying to get something from the side of the road and now putting his hand up to get a team car or the neutral car maybe to give him some water if the team car is still stuck behind the peloton. What we did see was, I think it was Alex Eghard who was just not willing to pull at that time just a couple minutes ago, and Romeo got quite annoyed with him. So I think that might be the reason that he's just a bit annoyed, trying to sit back and get the others to work. But in the end, that's not really gonna help him out. Of course, if he's just gonna work at the front now, he's got no chance of the stage win. And while the overall might be nice, I think he's also looking for a stage win in this race. So he's probably just trying not to be lent on too much to do the pace setting because he's the only rider who's up there in the overall.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. I know when riders are a bit younger as well, I think it's fair to say no criticism at all, more an observation. The riders can ride a little bit more on emotion as well, get frustrated quite easily, apply some tactics that are quite often strange, riding on feel. wanting to race, easily annoyed, and it takes a while to get a calm head. Yeah, this is their world at the moment. Of course, they think the future is obviously ahead of them. Bigger races are in the future, but right now this is what it's all about. I remember riding as a junior and an under 23, and you lived for the moment, didn't you? And quite often you were driven just by youth, impetuousness as well. And so I find the psychology of racing at this level, it is very different than at the elite level.
Yeah, and that's still, we go back constantly to that difference between some of the riders who are already riding at elite level, like Yvon Romeo, who we are looking at for, well, he's in the virtual yellow jersey. He's already a professional at a world team with Movistar, and he's done a couple big races. He's already done the likes of Tour Down Under, Tour de Romandie, has actually started in Paris-Roubaix and Tour of Flanders this year. He didn't finish those races, but he did start them, so he's got that experience that a lot of these riders in this race will not have yet.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It looks like he might actually be starting to roll through a little bit, and of course we've only been on air for 5 or 10 minutes. We don't know how much work he put in earlier on. It's quite possible that he did a lot of work, and as you said, once you see one or two other riders sitting on, namely Alex Segaert of Belgium, who isn't doing any riding at all. He is sat at the back, and Romeo is now riding. He's just on the inside there. Finally, it looks like he's got a well-needed beat on. So just that will definitely help. The other riders will know what the situation is on GC. Again, riders without radios, relying on information from the team car, but they should know what the situation is on the road, and it's now the French squad, without representation in the front move, who are starting to move through. But the gap isn't coming down particularly quickly, and for the vast majority of the day as well, the direction of wind, although it's only light, is helping them. So, and it's completely flat until the bottom of this pair of climbs that we have. The top of the Col de la Crusil comes at 12.5 k's to go, but it is a pretty long climb. It's around 4 or 5 kilometers long, and the top of the final climb of the day, another third category affair, is the Côte de Tirault. That comes at 4.1 k's to go before the plunge down to the beautiful lakeside. Stunning views here in the Savoie as we move through the Isère region. We started off in the Rhône, through Isère and into the Savoie today, but a very hard finish. But my point being, Jens, that this sort of road, completely pan flat, is ideal for a big group of riders to roll through chain gang style, isn't it? I mean, it's absolutely perfect for a breakaway, especially the amount of riders they've got in their 12.
Yeah, especially if you look at that the peloton here. There's a rider, the Italian, who just pulled off, and he just had to go back in third place. So there's only 3 riders pulling through there. 12 riders in the break. They might not all be working, but you know, you can do the math. 12 riders versus 3. It's advantage to the breakaway at this point, and that's, I think, why some riders seem to be very happy to just sit back, not work at all in the breakaway, just trusting that they will stay away just by sheer force of numbers. Alex Segaert has been sitting at the back really since the start of our broadcast, so that's not too long, but just over 10 minutes. He's done absolutely nothing. Anders Voldegger has been in his wheel for a while, and the rest of the breakaway almost seems to have forgotten about him, because they're just pulling through, and he's well, it's well in his ability to just go solo with 20 kilometers to go. He's the time trialist, already a professional rider as well for Lotto Soudal. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do about it, but at this point the cooperation in that front group, I think it's not going to get any better if the riders keep acting like this.
And also, this is an ideal situation when you think about GB, for example. They've got Robert Donaldson in the move, but GB have 2 riders inside the top 10 as well. So this is an ideal situation to force the other GC teams to chase. And when you look at the profile of this race, in the last 15 or 20 Ks, or just in the last 15 Ks, in fact, it's going to suit the lighter climbers like a Lucas Nurikar to go on the offensive and try and isolate the other GC riders. So I think, although the gap is coming down now, still that's just under 56 kilometers to go. So a considerable chunk has been taken off the lead, which will come as a welcome relief to the likes of France, to the likes of Italy and Switzerland, who have missed this move. It does offer up a possibility, if the break does stay clear, for a separate fight for the general classification behind, depending, of course, how Yvon Romeo climbs as well. And he does look, he's quite a tall figure. Not too sure how well he climbs, although these are only shorter climbs, not super steep. He looks more like a classic specialist to me, based on the results that we've seen so far and the sorts of races that Movistar, as you were talking about, have put him into.
Yeah, but I think in this kind of field he should be able to go uphill fairly well. He's a tall rider, but he's strong. He's got a good time trial as well. I think just a 2-kilometer climb and then that shorter, longer but less steep climb just before, I think he should be able to get over those. Maybe not the best in that group, but it's not going to be like him losing 2 minutes over those climbs. Definitely not. I think if the advantage is big enough, he should be able to hold on to that yellow jersey. But it's interesting to see 12 riders versus those 3 at the front of the peloton. The front of the peloton actually breaking up now as well in that short bit of feed zone there. A couple of riders chipping off the front, and that's probably not going to be their goal. But those riders have actually taken half a minute off the gap, so that is a sign that the cooperation in the front is not ideal. They're not going as fast as they can at the moment. So they're playing a game. Nothing's definitive in this scenario. If enough riders don't want to go full gas in this front group, then the peloton might even come back with just those 3 riders riding.
Yeah, it's a different end game. The 3 riders in front know their job is to bring this gap down as best they can, and will essentially empty the tank way before the finishing line. There's no way they can make this sort of effort and stay in the front, but that isn't what's in their mind. It's about trying to shut this gap down. Meanwhile, for the 12 riders in front, I'd imagine all of them, bar 1 or 2, there's some different sorts of riders in the mix, although the climbs at the end aren't particularly brutal. They're some of the hardest we've had so far, unsurprising, as we're heading now into the foothills or the smaller mountains before an enormous couple of days coming up. We really do hit some mighty climbs in the next 3 days, leading into the final stage on Sunday. But yeah, the mindset of the riders in front will be slightly different. But they have to keep riding. There's another 5 seconds been taken off, despite the fact that we saw splits at the front. And although, Jens, I was saying the 12 riders out in front, it is a good number. It's also heading towards a number where it's becoming slightly unwieldy. A little bit too, there is the opportunity to rest up at the back, and as soon as 1 or 2 riders pick up that there's a couple of riders, or even one sitting on, it can be quite a quick chain reaction of saying, well, if you're not going to ride, I'm not going to ride. Then you've got 4 riders doing it, and the speed does slow down. And then, as we see as well with breakaways this size, even on these on the flat run into the climb, if somebody becomes a little bit impatient, we could see some attacking. Maybe it's a little bit of a long way out, but we've seen that happen before. When a break's too big, 1 or 2 riders attack just to get a group going that works a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see a break go with about 30 kilometers to go. I think right now it's a bit early, and it does seem like some more riders are actually pulling through again. But now just seeing Voldegger has been at the back for a while behind Segaard. I think Segaard just did a turn at the front, Voldegger still at the back, and you see in fact a couple of riders sitting in behind him, also not doing any turns now. So yeah, that scenario does seem to be unfolding where not everyone's willing to work, and that could lead to some breakup in that group as well, and then we could see an even more interesting final with attacks from fairly far out, because there are going to be riders also who are better suited to that flatter terrain before the climbs start, and then there's going to be riders who are willing to sit in and wait for the climbs to make their move.
Yeah, very interesting mix of riders, as we say. The British rider Rob Donaldson is a good all-rounder, but he's got a particularly fast kick on him. He's had some good results so far this year. He was top 5 in the first few stages of the Giro Next Gen, which ended in bunch kicks. We know a little bit about Anders Voldegger, good all-rounder, likes a nice breakaway. This is 2nd day out in the move, 3rd day out in the move, of course. Day 1 and day 2. Day 2 was the team time trial. Did a lot of work for his team yesterday, and ultimately lost a lot of time. Actually lost a lot of time on stage 2, was caught the wrong side of that crash once he was caught after being out in front with just 1 other rider. It was a very interesting day, but despite those efforts, the Danes still managed to blitz the team time trial just a couple of days ago now. But over half distance in terms of stages now in this year's Tour de l'Avenir. And I'm just looking ahead as this gap settles now, 52.2 Ks to go. 2 minutes as the French continue to ride on the front. Tomorrow, a completely different dynamic to the stage. It's an absolute brute. We start in Méribel and we finish at the top of the Col de la Loze. It's only a 68.5k stage. Bit of a downhill start, rolling downhill start. Then they've got a second cat climb at 21k's, and then the 23-kilometre ascent to the finish at the Col de la Loze. That is going to be an interesting stage, and especially the distance as well. I would imagine it's going to be around an hour and a half, hour and 3/4 of riding, because of the horrific slopes of the Col de la Loze. But that's what lays ahead tomorrow. That's going to be an interesting one, and quite clearly that's where the purer climbs will come out to play tomorrow, Jens.
Yeah, it will be. I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be an hour and a half and we're just going to, or even 2 hours, where we see averages of 30 kilometers an hour or even less, with that huge climb at the end. The whole stage is basically a climb and then a little bit of riding beforehand. So it's going to be an intense stage, especially with that length. It's usually pretty intense. And it's the first of 3 mountain stages, or 4 in fact, with that mountain time trial on Saturday morning, which unfortunately I don't think we are going to show you, but that's we'll get the results of that and then the remaining 2 stages afterwards.
Yeah, it's a great, well, depending on your point of view, it's certainly a fascinating lineup of stages we've got following today. Today, as you can see, is turning out to be another thriller. Will the break stay clear? Will they get caught? It is essentially 12 fighting for all 5 at the moment. Switzerland, Italy and France are the big teams that have missed this one. Denmark, the yellow jersey on the shoulders of Simon Dolby. He's sitting back. He's already got a teammate up the road, Anders Foldege, who doesn't pose any threat for the GC, but could be a real threat to take another stage win. Very versatile rider, heading to the World Tour next year with Jaco Alula. He just swings into the back. This gap stabilising now. It's the figure of Oded Kogut at the back. Very fast finisher. But the gap is just steadily maintained, isn't it now? It's probably the best part of 1.5 kilometres at this sort of speed. They are moving exceptionally quickly. Not a cloud in the sky. You don't really get a sense of how hot it is down here, but been in contact with a couple of friends who are actually driving down to the Vuelta. Showed me some pictures on the front of their car on the temperature gauge, 42 degrees, as we look at confirmation of the GC at the moment. Dolby ahead of Rondel. Axel Huens just behind. So riders constantly dropping back. There's the situation, the classement par points, the points competition, the green jersey, currently on the shoulders of a Riley Pickrell. Equal on points, that'll be on count back. Both Pickrell and Foldege have 1 stages. And Loic Bettendorf of Luxembourg still in the lead. And looks like he could be okay to hold on to that one, but mathematically, if one rider does take both the points at the top today, as we look at the white jersey, Dolby leading that one, but Rondel wearing the jersey, both of the third cat climbs today carry 5 points at the top. So mathematically, if a one rider were to score points or win both climbs, they could move into the lead of the King of the Mountains. But a lot of road in between then and that point at the moment, as Switzerland continues to ride here, but they're not making much of an impression. There's clearly a big effort to take that 30 seconds, but now it's stabilizing at 2 minutes, and this group will know that, won't they? They will be getting fed information, and although I don't know who's assuming the road captain or the patron in this group out in front, but they can, given the amount of riders they've got, if it does start to plummet, they will get together and give it a little bit of push. They do have the strength to do that, and the strength in numbers, I mean.
Yeah, it's interesting what we just saw in the peloton. The Italian team just, it was sitting at the front, just in front of the Danish riders, and they've just completely disappeared from the front of the peloton. And then the sole French rider that was still pulling at the front also disappeared. So it is now only Switzerland and maybe 1 or 2 of the Danish riders also starting to cooperate, but it's not looking good for that chase with the two of the 3 teams that were working disappearing off the front of the peloton. And it did look like we might have seen a move in the breakaway, sort of an attack. Couldn't quite see it, but it was a bit strung out. So moves starting to be made already with slightly under 50 kilometers to go.
Yeah, it did look like there was a little move just chipping off the front, but it is indeed Denmark who have joined in the chase now. And the fact that they are now riding, or at least setting some sort of tempo, would suggest that Foldager will now start to sit on. There's only so long you can rely on other teams. If you do want to protect the jersey, you do have to ride yourself. It could have been that the Danes were riding early, but I wouldn't imagine so with Foldager up the road. But they're going up a small rise here, but they don't seem to be setting a ferocious pace here. More like saying, well, we'll keep the pace reasonably high, but we've got no reason to chase. We're pretty confident in the ability of this gap perhaps to come down on the slopes of the two climbs we have coming up. But yeah, Denmark now forced perhaps to at least set the tempo so the gap doesn't go out too much. It has to come down now to 1 minute and 50 seconds. So again, a good bit of tactical play here, but once the other teams start to fall away, Denmark will have to take this up a bit.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing in the early stages of this breakaway, but Anders Foldager, and since we've seen images, really, he has not done much. Maybe 1 or 2 turns, but he hasn't been at the front very often in this breakaway. So it does look like that's the tactic for the team of Denmark. They're just wanting to keep this jersey, and that means this breakaway can't get too much time because Ivan Romeo is slightly too close on GC. But we've had a breakaway from the breakaway. Fuga de la Fuga, as the Spanish say. 2 riders, I think, have chipped off the front of this one.
Yep. Exactly as we semi-predicted. There was just too many passengers, too many riders with different objectives, and too many riders thinking, well, this is the gap's coming down, there's not enough cohesion in here, we need to get a group off the front. And even though it's harder to ride in a smaller group, you're just more effective, more determined, and a little bit more effective. So Switzerland now driving hard. The Italians, after a brief bit of respite, have now put 3 riders on the front. So we've got 3 from Switzerland, 3 from Italy, and Denmark have managed to sit back again. Can't quite tell who the riders are. Oh, there we go. It's Kiop and Walsh who have gone clear. And they've got about 100 metres on the front here. And this could be a good move. It's, again, only 2 riders, again, isn't ideal. If it had been 3 or 4, they may have had a bit of a chance, but there does seem to be a little bit of coordination behind to try and bring them back. And at the end, isn't it fascinating the way that a group won't work together when there's 12, but when 2 go off the front, they will start to chase, although it's not quite as effective. It's the dynamics of breakaways of this size are absolutely fascinating, aren't they?
Yeah, it is starting to work, but still 3 riders sitting at the back there, and I think Alex Segaard was not sitting on the back out of tactical of a tactical idea. It just seemed like he was maybe dealing with some cramps there at the back, just touching his upper leg there. So that might be a sign that he's having some cramps. Foldager is still at the back of that group, and the Israeli rider Kogut also sitting at the back now. I don't know if that's again a tactical thing, or if he's just gone to the back to get some drinks maybe, but it is working. I think those 2 riders might not be the ideal group, and I think it's starting to look like they're going to get brought back by the rest of the breakaway.
Yeah, it does. Only 5 seconds is the lead, and they're absolutely motoring. Kogut is the man at the back. Again, looking at his build, looking at his the way he finishes, maybe thinking, well, I don't want to do too much. I'm more of a sprinter. Although we were talking about it at length the other day, at this stage in a lot of riders' careers, although they may be starting to specialise, still a lot of the riders still developing. You don't fully know what riders they're going to turn out to be, but Kogut, I think, well, he's definitely a good sprinter, so maybe thinking miss a few turns, there's no point in going flat out when we've got 2 big hills coming up, especially if he's thinking about surviving in this group potentially to unleash that sprint at the end. So the wise thing to do is to just do enough so you don't wind everybody up, so you don't frustrate and break down the cohesion in the group, but also just save a little bit of energy so you're as fresh as you can be when you hit the climb. And he's starting to ride through, but 10 seconds now, so they've doubled their lead here, Jens. So Walsh and Kiop so far looking good.
Yeah, we just saw a huge turn from Delgoso on the front, one of the 2 Dutch riders, and there's also 2 Germans in that group, but one of the Germans has moved up the road, the Dutch both in that second group. That's probably the idea from the Dutch, trying to pull that back, but not quite strong enough to do it on his own, so they're going to have to rely on the group to work together. But you see there are some issues here. The gap's starting to form again, riders not willing to pull through. Foldager closing gaps means there's 2 riders behind him, and those 2 are also not going to work, because we've established that Foldager is not intent on riding in this group.
Yeah, Foldager, no real surprise at all. They're in the ideal situation here. Italy now chasing. This chase is taking a lot out of these riders. They know with 44 Ks to go, we're approaching the last hour of racing, even factoring in those climbs. They're moving so quickly on the flat. I'd say we've got about an hour and 5 minutes still to go, but they are moving very quickly, and they cannot afford just to ride tempo. And at the sort of speeds that they're approaching, it's actually hard to eat into the lead, given that little bit of a tailwind they've got. Although the coordination in front, Liam Walsh and Pierre-Pascal Kiop, have sat up now. A momentary opportunity just to get some food down, a little bit of liquid before latching on to the group. Walsh, again, another fast finisher, took the sprint earlier on. And the gap's gone out now, 2 minutes and 10 seconds, as we see Pepijn Reinderink hit the front for the Netherlands. And occasionally, with these little breaks that go and come back, what it does, it reminds quite often the riders in the group that actually it's a good idea to just ride together for a bit longer. That might buy the breakaway another 10 Ks of actually riding as a unit before the attacks go again, because it can be quite nervous, can't it? But once it comes back together, it's like, guys, if we're going to survive, let's at least ride for another 15-20 minutes together to give ourselves as much of an opportunity of one of us staying away at least.
Yeah, I think if they continue to ride for another 20 minutes, that's done. That's the break winning. Yep. I don't see that coming back at that point, because then we'll see attacks, and those attacks will keep the pace high enough to stay clear of the peloton unless even more teams start to cooperate in the peloton, but I'm not seeing that right now. So we are seeing cooperation return to the breakaway. Still, Foldager sitting on the back. Also, Segard sitting on his wheel again. Sort of that theme where most of the riders are willing to work, but some of the riders just, for one reason or another, not doing it. And I think at some point that's going to mess it up again, I think, because riders are going to notice in about 5 minutes' time that, hey, this rider has still not taken a pull at the front. And they'll get annoyed, and they'll try to get rid of those riders before the climbs start.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. It really is, but they're relaying well. Alex Segard sits well down on the general classification. As you say, is already riding at the top level. All in name, really, UCI Pro Team, our Lotto Destiny, but all in name, really, a World Tour outfit. He's had a good race program. Still very young, though, 20 years of age, but clearly has been instructed to sit on the back. And Belgium, one of the teams with only 4 riders left. They've lost Verven and Gelders early on. As we get a nice overhead shot of their breakaway. Sorry, the bunch. No, it's the break. It's the break passing through now. Spread out a little bit. Another little gap opening up. This break of 12 that's been away after a very active opening a few kilometres back at Le Tour de Salvagny in the Rhône region. As we pass by this beautiful site. What a serene setting it is. But it's far from serene in the peloton or up the road. Attritional warm conditions here as we approach the final 2 climbs of the day. And another car just barges up the road. I think that was the team car from the Netherlands by the looks of things. But to 2 minutes is the gap. So it came down to 150, it's gone up to 2 minutes again. 42 Ks to go. We are definitely within the last hour of racing as riders continue to ask for bidons. Keep those fluid levels topped up. But this is looking increasingly good for the break at the moment.
Yeah, it's not too long to go anymore for that breakaway. It's 12 riders should be able to manage that if the corporation is good enough to warrant that. But it's still, we're going to see attacks at some stage. It's just about how long the break can cooperate together, can keep working as a unit. But this doesn't look like they're working as a unit right now already, and that's a sign, maybe advantage to the peloton, but again, once the pace drops, someone's going to attack and up the pace again, which is the issue in this group. You always have to be at the front, but that gets increasingly more difficult as the longer the race goes on. Reinderink here notices the danger and goes, but the other riders, they're just waiting until someone else does the work, but the other riders don't seem to be doing it right now.
Yep. A little bit of poker being played here. It might be the first time I've used the word poker in 5 days of bike racing, but a little bit of poker being played here. You're playing a dangerous game. You risk losing the situation, and quite often it plays off, but quite often you find yourself behind, and then it's very hard to bring any gaps back. We've seen splits like that occur at real important moments of big races. It's not just about big explosive attacks, although it is of course a lot, but quite often we see race-winning moves evolve from just little bits of interplay like that, where a rider's frustrated at the lack of cooperation of one particular rider, tries to take them out the back, and actually this is what we're seeing happen here. Complete and utter, well, there's no cohesion at all. In fact, the one rider who's hasn't profited from this at all is Oded Kogut. He finds himself at the back. He has been taken out the back. But can you just explain what that is when a rider eases off and we see these gaps open? And sometimes riders do it to actually remove a rider from the breakaway, don't we? Just explain how that works. And it does happen in situations like this.
Yeah, I think what we just saw was just a couple of riders either consciously or unconsciously banding together to draw out Anders Foldager. Foldager was in that group that had just dropped off the back, and I think all the other riders noticed that he was not doing the work, so gaps opened up and they just sat on his wheel until he did the work, and he was the rider who brought that gap down most of the way. Has cost us Oded Kogut, sorry. I think what you also have to imagine is some riders are just not going to have the legs anymore in this final. It's been a very hot 2 days. The riders have been suffering, probably not recovering too well either during the night with these high temperatures. No air conditioning in most of the hotels they stay in this part of the country. So I think some riders, Kogut is back actually, that's quite an impressive move, but we've got another move off the front once again.
Well, he's a very classy rider. He's certainly quick. Just looking at some of the results that he's had this year, he's won 6 races, including the time trial and the Israel National Championship. So he's a man that can ride very well against the clock, as well as winning bunch sprints. He took no less than 3 stages in the Kola Moscow race, took the opening 3 bunch sprints, and that just illustrates, as well as the other day when he finished up there, how quick he is. But he's back in contact. And what we're seeing at the moment is Rob Donaldson, rides for Trinity Racing, having a conversation with John Herity. I think that's John Herity in the team car there, giving him instructions and the lead. And meanwhile, despite the lack of coordination, the lead has gone out. But quite often, you get this ebb and flow from the break. They'll slow down a little bit as a group of riders, but once they start attacking it, you get these enormous spikes in speed, and when you average them out, they actually are moving slightly quicker than the breakaway. Sometimes that's quite counterintuitive, but those big accelerations can open things up a lot, and they've added another 10 seconds to the lead, despite the fact there's only a brittle harmony between them now.
Yeah, and we are seeing another nation coming up to the front of the peloton now, with Austria seeming to put a man up there as well. So just another rider going to add some impetus to the chase, but it's necessary with the speed being even higher in the breakaway now. It's a fascinating game, but the Arctic's going to snap at some point after one of those attacks, and it's just going to be about when that is and who's in front and who's not there anymore.
Well, we start the penultimate climb of the day with 16.4 k's to go, so still the best part of 18 k's till we hit that point. 16k should I say. Well, the Netherlands having a good day so far. Del Grosso just at the back there, just behind him, his teammates Pepin Reindering. Both sit at just around 3 minutes down, 2 minutes and 49 for Del Grosso, 3:10 for Reindering. A reminder that the best placed rider in this move is the 20-year-old, plies his trade for the World Tour team Movistar, Ivan Romeo. He sits at 58 seconds, just under a minute behind in the 20th place on the general classification. He's the man that poses the biggest threat, and there are several big teams that have missed this move. France, they're on the front at the moment. They've got the best young rider, and they've got 2nd and 3rd in the general classification. Denmark are chasing, or they're assisting in the pacemaking here, although they do have a rider in the move, Anders Foldager, already a stage winner. He took out the opening stage of this race and indeed was the first yellow jersey wearer, but that's Simon Dolby in the jersey and two other squads who are keen to try and see the gap from this break brought down a fair bit. Italy and Switzerland. Switzerland have a couple of riders up in the top 10 as well, of course, of taking yesterday's stage. Superb win by Fabio Christian yesterday, but it's Jan Christian who is their main man for the GC, but still holding steady at 2 minutes and 10 seconds here. And these kilometres ticking by very quickly, and although there's a good chase here, the pace differential just isn't enough at the moment, and I'm struggling to see which other teams have got enough firepower when you factor in wanting to protect their leaders for the final two climbs. Maybe save for Denmark, who we've seen how good they are as a unit. They've got one man at the road. They seem to be the team that might have enough to bring this back if they're minded to, but right now they're not making too much of a difference.
No, they've just put one man up the front of the peloton, it seems, not committing their full team to chasing, but I think they're just looking to keep the gap close enough that they might not lose the jersey. That seems the most reasonable tactic for them, not really going for the stage win, just caring about the jersey at this point and keeping that gap manageable. But we have seen a move off the front of the breakaway. I just saw a rider go into the distance, 10 seconds now, already getting a report of 20 seconds from the race radio. Tim Thorn Teutenberg is the rider that's moved off the front for Germany. So again, Germany on the attack. The two riders in the breakaway, they're making use of their numbers, it seems.
Teutenberg clear. 10 seconds, it's saying. I think the gap is moving out a little bit, but Teutenberg, 20 seconds, there we go. That is a considerable gap as we head ever nearer the foot slopes, or the lower slopes, should I say, of the first of our two categorized climbs, which punctuate the end of the stage before we plummet down to the Lac Gobelet. It is an absolutely beautiful location, but quite a technical run into the line, as well as the two climbs that we're talking about. The final few kilometres of today's stage, I mean, it's going to favour riders clearly who descend well, because it only flattens out, as far as I'm aware, with about 300 metres to go. So it's I'm not going to say it's a dangerous finish, but it's unusual that we see finishes right at the very bottom of a descent, but that is the way it is. We lose quite a lot of elevation in the last couple of Ks.
Yeah, shall I just say that it is fairly dangerous in the final 2 kilometers? It's a pretty steep descent as well. We've got that climb. It is in the road book, just looking at the numbers, it is 2.1 kilometers at 6.4%, but it's that's not really how it actually is, because the steepest 1.7 kilometers are already at 8%. So it is quite a steep climb and not very regular at that. And then we've got that short plateau at the top, a couple corners, and then quite a significant downhill. It's again quite a steep downhill, also sort of around 8% average, but it's got a couple hairpins in the middle of the descent, then some fast sections, and then a couple corners just before the finish line again, and then that final finish straight of about 300 meters on the flat. So we could see some risks being taken for the stage win. Riders trying to descend as fast as possible, and when you're taking risks like that, it could go wrong. Of course, it's not excessively dangerous. It's not like this is too dangerous to hold a finish on. But we could see a crash if a rider just goes over the limit to try and win that stage.
Yeah, it's. I was just looking at the profile last night, doing a bit of a deeper study, and yeah, slightly surprising there isn't a bit more of a flat run in after, but that's where the finish is. You could see that the finishing straight itself very short when they finally turn into the line. In fact, they won't pick up the gantry, they won't come into sight probably until about 200 meters to go, maybe even slightly less actually, so it is a very short run to the line. A little bit longer than the team time trial finish we saw the other day. We saw one of our Belgians slide off into the barriers. Despite that, they still set a very respectable time, but still this gap holding steady. Austria also assisting with the pacemaking as well now. That was Philipp Hofbauer on the front. So the Austrians wanting to take a piece of the action, and meanwhile off the front there's another little move, and this time after being out of the back it is Oded Kogut, and it looks like it's Liam Walsh on his wheel trying to get across to the German.
Yeah, it's surprising to see Kogut dropped first, and then now he's on the move trying to chase down Teutenberg. But also movement from behind, riders trying to get across the move again. Yeah, it's kicking off in the front, and that means that it's going to be even harder for the peloton to chase this down. Of course, that also does mean that the riders in the breakaway might be a little bit less fresh coming into those climbs, which means they might lose some more time than they otherwise would on the climbs themselves, which opens up the opportunities for the peloton again. But still 2 minutes, 32Ks to go. It could still come back together, but the advantage is definitely still for the breakaway, I would say.
Well, Teutenberg is looking very good at the moment. Yep. I'm increasingly minded if they keep that gap, but even if they keep the gap at around 1.5 minutes, it won't be long. It's now going to be 16K till they hit the bottom of this climb. And the Col de la Creuselle, 4K is at 5.8%. It is steeper at points. They descend that. It's quite a steep descent into the bottom of the next climb. Apologies, we've just lost our pictures briefly. Hopefully they'll return to us shortly. But yep, here we go, back to our breakaway. This is indeed Teutenberg here, 21 years of age. Rides for the consultant team at Leopard TOGT Pro Cycling, but is currently a stagiaire for Lidl Trek. Is signed on for their development team for 2024, so a real talent already with several big wins on the board, and clearly pretty versatile. Looks nice and aero there, but this little group of two, Walsh and Kogut, look to be getting across, and despite Switzerland, Denmark and Italy team time trialing on the front, the breakaways still maintaining pretty much exactly the same speed.
Yeah, Teutenberg also a really good track cyclist. He was 7th in the Omnium at the recent World Championships in Glasgow. So he's probably just working towards the Olympics next year and then becoming more of a specialist in road cycling. It does seem like the track is his main focus. But that still means he's a strong cyclist, also on the road, even though he might not be focusing on it that much. But it's these three riders, all three of them, pretty fast finishers, but maybe not the best on the climb. So it's a good move for them to get out ahead of the rest of the group before those climbs start, because then they'll have a small buffer that they can work with to try and win the stage.
Yeah, that's exactly what, when you look at the sort of riders that they are, even just the physique on the bike, and they're all riders with that little bit of extra punch. Staying 20 seconds, but it looks as if that gap might be coming down slowly. But yeah, I do agree. It's a move that we quite often see in stages where we have sizable breaks, climbs towards the end. Invariably, there are riders who want to take their chances and clip away just early to build themselves that little bit of a buffer, as you just described, Jens. That little bit of sliding room as well. And that way they don't need to push themselves into the red. If they still ride at a decent pace, they could still end up at the sharp end of the race fighting for a stage win. So it's a tactic that on the surface might look strange, but it is in fact a wise move. It's their best opportunity rather than going to head with the riders who are superior in the climbing department. But 30.4 Ks to go now. As you can see, not a cloud in the sky. Wherever you are in the world, thank you very much indeed for joining us. A bit of a change of plan today. I think both Jens and myself in particular were caught slightly by surprise at the earlier start time, but I think it's certainly worthwhile, especially in relation to the ridiculously high temperatures that a lot of southern Europe is getting at the moment. It's looking like this afternoon it could go well over 40 degrees as we see our break of 3 that are split away from this group of 12, leaving 9 just behind. Oded Kogut of Israel is there, Liam Walsh of Australia, and then we have the German rider Tom Teutenberg. The best placed of the 3 out in front is Teutenberg at 3 minutes and 34 seconds. But as Jens was alluding to, this is all about building themselves a little bit of a buffer as they hit the climb. And looks like things have slowed a little bit behind. I'm not saying the bunch have resigned here, but a completely different shape at the front of the peloton.
I'm not actually sure that it's going any slower. I think it's just that thing that we've seen the last couple of days as well, just teams trying to position themselves in the front. It's like we see in the pro races all throughout the year. Just teams wanting to be at the front, positioning themselves really early, just trying to stay in the safest place possible with their leaders. And that's the change. we saw just a couple riders working at the front. Now it's blocked across, well, not quite across the road, but a couple teams next to each other, just keeping their leaders in position. And wonder what that's going to do to the gap. We've lost our GPS gap, but we'll probably get it back quite soon, and then we can see what kind of effect this change at the front of the peloton has had on the gap.
As we head into this final 40 minutes or so of racing on stage 5 of the Tour de l'Avenir. Earlier on today, well, very early on today, 2 hours earlier in fact, because of the high temperatures, we started at La Tour de Salvagny, and we are heading towards Lac d'Aigueboulet on the coast, on the shore, should I say. It's a beautiful lake in the Savoie region. 12 riders have gone clear. They are Alex Segaert, Ariane Schmidt of the USA, Segaert from Belgium, Liam Walsh of Australia, Rob Donaldson of Great Britain, 2 from Germany, Kjup and Teutenberg, 2 from the Netherlands, Del Grosso and Reinderink. Norway have Lowland there, and then Ivan Romeo of Spain also in the move. He's the best placed rider, sitting in 20th position at 58 seconds behind. In the last 10 Ks, that group has split and 3 riders have moved themselves off the front. Liam Walsh, Oded Kogut, and also Tim Tom Teutenberg. They're the 3 riders out in front, and here they are, and with 28.2 Ks to go. It's a good little fighting force here, and they are moving very effectively. This is an ideal number of riders, isn't it? No ambiguity at all of these riders willing to try and open up as much as a gap behind. Still 9 riders chasing them, but these look particularly well organised, all with a similar thing in mind, I think.
Yeah, they are working well together, but we're not seeing the remnants of the breakaway behind. The remaining 9 riders, what they are doing, as Walsh takes a bottle, which is quite impressive at that speed.
Yeah.
The peloton is just across the road, multiple world teams trying to stay at the front. These 3 just riding as fast as they can towards the finish line, trying to gain an advantage before the climbs start. And then that breakaway, or the rest of the breakaway in between, I'm not sure what exactly they are doing right now, but I imagine they'll try to keep this group in sight to maybe jump across on that first climb, or even only on the second climb.
Yeah, so still a pretty flat approach, as you can see. A little bit of a gentle tailwind, keeping these speeds very high. Short turns on the front. Teutenberg moves through. Arms at right angles, slotted in directly behind him, nice and tight on the wheel behind Oded Kogut. And then that little bit of a sprint to get onto the back wheel after that effort on the front. Not too much recovery time in a break of 3. But there we go. The gap is opening up. Well, the gap is closing. So this gap is what we call compressing now. So the leaders have opened up 25 seconds on the chasing 9 behind. And in turn, that shape on the front, although quite often you don't get quite the same sense of speed when they're in a long line, they are actually moving very quickly because they've taken another 30 seconds off. So, interesting stuff here. The bunch moving quickly as we approach the final part of today's stage, the 2 climbs that lead us to the finish at the side of the lake. And it is 1 minute and 30 seconds to the peloton.
Yeah, 1 minute and 30 seconds. That means that's just the riders pushing forward, trying to position themselves. That has pushed the pace up. And now I'm starting to get worried for that breakaway. 26 kilometers to go, 1:30. But you have to imagine it's just 1:30 to these 3 riders. It's a lot less. It's only just over a minute to the rest of the breakaway. Those 9 riders that are just behind. And even with a minute starting those climbs, it could become quite difficult to hold on to that gap.
Yep, I think that 2 minutes would have been what they needed at the bottom of the climb. With 2 climbs in the final 16 kilometers. The first one tops out at 12.5 Ks to go. The final climb, the Côte du Terreau, tops out at 524 meters above sea level. But that tops out 4.1 Ks to go. Then basically it's a plummet all the way down to the finish line. Only flat for the last 200 or 300 meters, in fact. As we see the United States of America, or not US, it's Norway getting involved in the chasing as well. So 1 minute and 30 seconds, and another 5 seconds taken by the group in front. The 3 riders that decided to go clear, perhaps not overly confident in their climbing ability, but the bunch moving very quickly. And once they've started to shut the gap down, that does actually add a little bit of momentum, a little bit of confidence. Other teams start to get involved, and you just get this real gathering of pace from the bunch behind.
I'm not even sure anyone's really worried about that breakaway anymore in the peloton. It's just the pace is so high with the positioning in mind. You see, yeah, it's just teams trying to stay at the front, but even then it's strung out. So it's the pace is really going up. And at this stage, they're getting so close to that second group that if there's just one team with one or two strong riders on that first climb, that's more of a drag. It's not too steep. I think that gap could almost be closed by the top of that climb, and then it's pretty easy for a GC rider who's been saving themselves for the entire day to just jump away on that final climb and pass all of the breakaway. So at this point, I think it's starting to swing in the favor of the peloton.
Yep, I certainly think so. Switzerland still riding, Denmark riding on the inside, Norway just passing through the centre as well. Still 1 minute and 30 seconds, but this gap seems to be fluctuating with the way that we're taking the time here. 24.3 k's to go, 16.4 to the bottom of the Côte de la Cruzière. Looks like these three riders, I think, even if the gap continues to come down, will at least start the bottom of the climb in front. But I do agree with you, Jens, there's too much firepower behind, and we've got, in total, if you add the two climbs together, we've got just over 6 k's of climbing on some pretty tough terrain. And with the gaps as they are, and the quality of the GC riders and the climbers we have behind, and also looking back at the way this race, every time we've got up a climb, the race has exploded. There's teams that have set tempos, but generally speaking, it's riders going on the offensive. And I do think for the first time, well, not for the first time, I do think again today we will see multiple attacks on this climb. And we might see a slight reshaping of the general classification. One or two riders might start to move down. Remember, it is Simon Dolby in the yellow jersey, in the maillot jaune. He has a 13-second advantage over two Frenchmen, Matthias Rondel and Axel Huer. In fourth, Pierre Thierry of France. Then we have a couple of Swiss riders, Jan Christian and Robin Dons. At 42 seconds, two riders from Great Britain, Joseph Blackmore and Lucas Nuricourt. Then we have a couple of Austrians in 9th, 10th and 11th. In fact, 3 Austrians, Marco Schrittel, Alexander Hayek and Maximilian Cabas. And then we have arguably one of the pre-race favourites in 12th at 48 seconds. That's Hannes Wilsch of Germany. And then just behind him, 2 seconds further back, Francesco Borsato, as it is Oded Kogut now getting distance on this short drag by the two riders that he's been with. It looks like Kogut starting to struggle now, but he's certainly not giving up here.
No, he's not giving up, but it's not looking great. If he's getting dropped on this small drag, then it certainly isn't looking good for the next 5 k's of climbing, because the climb is 5 kilometers, but the drag beforehand, it is already going to go uphill with 21 kilometers to go. The top of the climb is at 13 kilometers to go, so that's a pretty significant climb. It's not steep all the way, but I think Kogut, it's not going to be his day today.
No. It looks like he might be fighting a little bit of cramp there. There's a couple of times when he stopped midway through his pedal stroke. And the other two rocketing away now. Tim Teutenberg and Liam Walsh are moving clear. Group 2 at 40 seconds. So the Australian and the German now are moving well clear. It's a bold ride by this man. He's already had a good placing. And he's got back into that aero tuck again. And you can push through, even as soon as the road starts to flatten out again, if you're a slightly heavier rider, you struggle on the climb, but as soon as you get on the slight downhill sections or the flat, you can get moving again. But it did look like he suffered from a little bit of cramp, got out of the saddle on this gentle rise. But as you say, Jens, the approach to the climb isn't an easy one. It is slowly dragging all the way, so in total there's a lot more climbing than appears on at the profile. But meanwhile, Teutenberg and Walsh both looking good, both looking relatively fresh. Quick glance around to check the gap. Possibility Kogut might get back on, but a lot of pace, a lot of momentum from the bunch now behind.
Yeah, it's quick. We just saw the Dutch team car moving past the peloton to probably talk to the two riders they've got in the breakaway, but it just slowed down a little bit to talk to some of the riders in the peloton, which was a creative move. It's not necessarily allowed to do that, but no one was going to stop the Dutch team car there. Just those last instructions for the riders in the breakaway, but they are losing time. 40 seconds now to the two leaders, or which might become 3 depending on what Kogert manages to do on the last remaining flat section. But that second part of the breakaway, if that gap continues to come down to the peloton, they don't have a lot of time left out front.
Just a brief look at our pictures. That is the finish line. As you can see, just the moto coming through there. You can see the finish line doesn't open up till about 200 meters to go, give or take. Maybe 250. Come into that gentle right-hander. On the approach to that right-hander, it's a very long right-hander. It's essentially a hairpin bend over the space of 500 meters. I'm just looking at the plan of the final 5K over the top of the climb. It is a very fast descent. It's certainly not, doesn't have a rhythm to it. There's lots of different left and rights. There's several chicanes. It doesn't really, it's not one of those descents where you can get into rhythm where there's evenly spaced out hairpins or sweeping meandering turns. It's a series of different lefts and rights, some more acute than the previous. So quite a complex technical one. And I would imagine that a lot of the teams who were minded to try and win today, get riders up the road, whether there's a bit of local knowledge might play in the part, but it's this descent crucial that the riders get as much information about it before, and I'd imagine that all the DSs would have been on Google Street View. As we look at the one rider getting caught, that's Artem Schmidt from the breakaway, and straight off the back it is Colby Simmons moving on the lower slopes of this climb here.
Yeah, one American getting caught and the next one starting this attack immediately afterwards. Simmons, interesting move just before the break gets caught, which is generally, well, it's an interesting timing for an attack. It looks like 50 seconds the peloton now. I imagine that must be Simmons now with 50 seconds, and I think the remnants of that breakaway, they're slowly falling apart. He must be right on top of them really soon. Wonder if anyone's going to be able to hang with him, but it's an interesting move. I think just with the it's quite a shallow climb, and then the descent is not the steepest either. It's really early to go, but of course he's not there. GC hope he can try something and take some risk, maybe losing some time later on if it doesn't work out. That's not too big of a risk with Riccitello still in as their GC rider, but it's an attempt. This is what we see in the Tour de l'Avenir always. Just the second the road goes uphill, someone starts attacking.
Yeah, Colby Simmons just finished inside the top 20 in the recent under-23 World Road Race. Just got caught behind in that split, 16th place it was, but a very good climber. Has got next year with the Continental Jumbo-Visma team. He's been with that team for, well, will be with that team for 3 years by the time next season ends, but these are our two runners up in front. As you saw, a lot of the breakaway has been caught. We just saw Rob Donaldson of Great Britain being reabsorbed by the peloton, as Colby Simmons now moves clear. Still only 19 years of age from Durango. As you can see, he's got the build of a climber. We're not actually on the categorized part of the climb yet, but as you were describing, Jens, this is that horrible drag that leads us into the bottom of the climb, so no momentum taking us into the climb. So essentially a pretty long haul up to the top, which is about, well, depending on which road book you read, 12.5 or 13 Ks to go. But an interesting move here by Colby Simmons, and opened up a little bit of a gap as Walsh now moves clear of Tom Teutenberg.
Yeah, Walsh looks like he's on a really good day. He was in that earlier move with Teutenberg's teammate Kuip, also moving off the front of the breakaway, and now he seems to be going at it alone. 50 seconds is going to be a tall order to make it to the finish line in the zone, but he's going to try his best. It's the only option remaining to him. If he drops back to the peloton, that's his day done. So this is the right move, just getting rid of the rider who's not really pulling their weight in the corporation anymore. Maybe just doesn't have the legs. So Walsh just has to commit to this move now and see where it takes him.
That was a good move. Meanwhile, Solo American rider Colby Simmons. Not too sure how many riders are actually left. A few have come back to the peloton. Not too sure how many are surviving in between. He hasn't caught Oded Kogut just yet, unless that happened off camera. But he's driving into this climb very nicely. He's got clear daylight. It's another rider. Is one of the riders from the Netherlands. Oh no, this is the head of the course, shall I say. This is Walsh, still clear, looking good. Teutenberg just that little dot in the distance. Slightly flatter section here. Still moving very fast, and you can just see, well, that's the remnants of the break scattered down the road here. Just under 18 kilometers to go. But Simmons has opened up a decent lead over the bunch here. Well, I say decent lead, 10 or 15 seconds now by the young man from Durango, the same town as multiple exceptionally gifted climbers, including, of course, Sepp Kuss.
Yeah, he will know how to go uphill, but this is not really his terrain, I would say, with this this flatter section in the climb. This is not the steepest climb we're going to see this week or even today. It did look from that previous shot like we've got Walsh in front. Teutenberg is quickly going to be reabsorbed by, I think, a group of 6 riders that's still in between the gap. And then we've got Simmons just behind that, trying to get across to that group. So we could see sort of a new breakaway form with some riders from the older breakaway and some riders coming across, like Simmons. But at the moment, he's the only one trying anything, and the peloton looks fairly controlled behind.
They're clearly not too worried about Simmons just at the moment. No response to the solo attack by the American. Brief bit of respite here on this slight downhill section that leads into a bit of a plateau. Remember, we've still got one rider out in front, Liam Walsh. Again, no threat posed by him on the GC. 9 minutes and 39 seconds. Haven't seen where Ivan Romeo has gone. We only have 2 cameras on which to focus on the riders, but I think the threat from Romeo must have been extinguished. But the gap from front to the peloton now, and there is Walsh, and there is the remnants of the break. Still 4 or 5 riders left in the mix as the road continues to rise, and it won't be too long. In fact, just the next couple of 100 meters where we actually hit the bottom of the categorized part of the climb, and that's where the road will start to steepen, and it already is starting to steepen now. And it looks like the gap of Colby Simmons over the peloton behind is starting to stabilize here, Jens.
Yeah, I'm just not sure that this is a great move for him. The climb is just not really steep enough to get a good advantage. I think the speeds are going to be high enough that it's just an aerodynamic advantage to be in the peloton and sit in the wheels. Although some more riders seem to be trying it from behind. I think that's a rider from Slovenia. Who's just made an attack from the peloton. So if those good riders could get together, it could be interesting.
Looks like there might be yeah,
just working together is just going to be beneficial, and just a rider on their own is just going to suffer quite a lot on these kinds of gradients. Around 5%, it's just not steep enough to go at it alone.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you thought the climb was a little bit steeper. Looks like it was one of the Belgian riders as well in the blue. Strange saying the Belgian kit's blue, but it is. But meanwhile, this is one of the Dutch riders who has now swept past Liam Walsh. His time at the front is done. Well, that looked like it was a Romeo, actually, didn't it? I think it was indeed Ivan Romeo, so with the light kit. So the best placed rider in the breakaway is now going solo. He was sat on a fair bit in that group, but is now romping clear, and has actually got a nice bit of daylight between him and the rest. So it's not Simmons now. You can just tell with the Movistar helmet there. And this is the figure of the best placed rider on the GC now. He has a look behind, and it looks like, is that Anders Foldager just behind as well? There's also Lowland as well in the Norwegian kit, which looks similar from a distance, and it is indeed a rider from Belgium and a rider from Slovenia, as you correctly identified, although the Slovenian has dropped off the wheel of the Belgian. So a lot of activity happening on the lower slopes of the Côte de la Creusille. 16.5 Ks to go. This is a good gap that's opened up here.
Yeah, this is the Belgian rider Lars Kops, I'm pretty sure, for the Belgian national team, races for Soudal Quick-Step development team in his daily life. But he's just quite a strong rider. He was touted as a classic rider at the start of the year, but he actually managed to finish 7th overall in Tour d'Alsace recently. That was just last month, where he finished in 6th place on the final mountain stage. So he can actually go uphill quite well, but he's more of a classics type rider, just specialized in those shorter hills. He's actually one rider who is really suited to this kind of terrain. So if he could get together with Simmons, maybe 1 or 2 other riders, then that has some potential, I think, that move.
Well, it is, if get across to Ivan Romeo as well, there could be a good, strong fighting force. So it is Alex Sigard who was in the break. He's just still there. He's just in front of Anders Foldager, and just behind him is Lolland as well, and they are just about to be caught by Lars Krebs, just latching onto the back wheel here. And this is where Sigard will provide quite an important role, isn't it? It's just to keep that pace as high for as long as he can, giving the opportunity for his teammate to rest up a little bit and find something special, because this is an interesting move. It looks like Foldager has perhaps had enough, or is that just him looking round to see what the situation is? No, it's a wide sweep just to have a look, and latches back on sensibly on the back of the other Belgian. So this is an interesting little move. So one rider has come across to 3 surviving riders from the initial break of 12, and meanwhile the biggest threat on the general classification has now jumped clear up the road. Ivan Romeo now solo out in front for Spain with 16.5 kilometers to go.
Yeah, so the overview of the situation, Romeo in front, then we've got 2 chasers that we just sort of saw in the background. Been reported that they are Pepijn Reindering for the Netherlands and Pierre-Pascal Kuip for Germany, and I think, not quite sure where Liam Walsh is. He was up there, but he's, here we go, he's just going to be caught by Segaard, who's trying to pull as much of an advantage out for Lars Kops. The only rider that I'm not quite sure where he is now is Colby Simmons, because he was in front of the peloton. Kops just attacked out of the peloton, but not quite sure where Simmons is. But Segaard is putting on a monster pace there from the breakaway, just dropping the other riders in that group, trying to pull Lars Kops clear of the peloton. And he's doing quite a good job. It's quite a well-executed use of satellite riders that we sometimes see go even worse in the pro peloton, where they have got team radios. Of course, this race ridden without the team radios, but still really well-executed strategy from the Belgians team.
Now, this is a cracking move. It really, really is. Sigard still on the front here. Ignore the ticket on the top left of your screen. That hasn't moved for the best part of 5 minutes. 16.5 k's to go. It is a constant. We're a little bit nearer the top of this first of 2 climbs. I would say about 2 or 3 kilometers from the top now. As you can see, it's a gradual climb, 4 k's at 5.8%, and a climb where there is still a real benefit of sitting in the wheels, especially in the peloton behind. And the situation that we're seeing with the 2 Belgians, Lars Krebs and Alex Sigard, the duo that are trying to bridge across to Ivan Romeo, who is looking very strong as well. Remember, the most potent threat on the general classification, and does ride. He's not a stagiaire, he's a fully fledged World Tour rider, a young one, only 20 years of age, but right now is moving effectively at the top of the climb. A bit frustrated there. That was a big call for some water, wasn't it? I'm sure that they've extended the point on the road where they can feed, especially with the chaleur that we are experiencing here in the south of France and a lot of mainland Europe. But a desperate cry for liquid there.
Yeah, and of course these are just national teams for the under-23s. They don't have a million soigneurs to post along the route. They'll just have a couple people standing on the course, otherwise relying on team cars. And for Romeo, he's been out the front for quite a while, so no team car with him at the moment, which means he's going to have to rely on maybe some kindness from the other soigneurs of different countries who might be giving him some bottles if he is lucky. But here we see some rider getting caught by the 2 Belgians. Is that Reindering? I think. Oh, the image is not very clear, but it does look like Reindering is being caught by the 2 Belgians.
Yep. Again, please do just ignore the top left of your screen. We are far nearer the finish than that, but we've still got another climb to go. And there we go. Good riding, superb riding there, sacrificial riding by Alex Sigard. that use of the satellite rider, as you said, that wonderful, effective stepping stone. I wonder if that was the plan all along, to get somebody up the road. It certainly seemed like it was. And good riding as well by Reindering, one of the main protagonists at the back end of yesterday's stage. A good climber, punchy rider. No real threat on the GC, sits at 310. This is all about trying to latch onto the wheel of Lars Krabs, who will be certainly a little bit fresher, you would imagine. The under-23 champion from the Netherlands, a part of that initial breakaway, as was this man as well, Ivan Romeo, who must be coming towards the top of this climb very shortly. Again, apologies for the slight little bit of confusion into whereabouts these riders are, but we believe these are the second two riders on the road. And Romeo has a lead of about 20 or 30 seconds, maybe even more. He's completely out of sight at the moment. So Romeo is moving remarkably effectively on the first of these two climbs. They plummet down the other side, and then they commence the climb of the Côte du Terreur. So an exciting final few kilometers on stage 5 here of the Tour de l'Avenir. As we look, it looks like that might be the top of the climb.
Yeah, it does look like it, and we'll expect Romeo to come over the top pretty soon. Just wondering whether Pierre-Pascal Kuip is still in between, or if he's already been caught by Cups there. But we'll just have the timer on. If this camera can stay here, that would be very nice. But it does look to be moving, so that might be a futile effort. But yeah, I think we're just going to see those two chasers come up to the top now.
It should be then. Nice use of the drone here, just hovering above. It is a reasonable gap. Another moto speeds past. So Romeo, I tell you what, I did think we'd see a little bit more activity from the peloton behind, but this is a significant move here. And this is Krabs and Reindering. Two riders from the lowlands, cresting the top of the climb. Good move by them.
Yeah, 34 seconds for them. This is another rider who we're I wonder if that's it's probably going to be Kuip, maybe Walsh still, about 50 seconds behind. And then the peloton was just reported at about 1 minute and 10 seconds. I think this is Kuip still hanging on for fourth place on the road at the moment. And then the peloton should come up pretty soon, because we've already passed almost 1 minute and 10 seconds. Just one more rider in between there. And we're just waiting for the peloton to come across and to see how far they are behind Romeo.
Well, there they are. It's about a minute 10, minute 20, isn't it? So it's a decent lead. Well, there is the peloton. It's certainly thinned out somewhat, as you would expect. A rather high-speed feed just over the top. They then plummet down this descent. No flat at all. It's a descent, the best part of 5 or 6 Ks. And then they commence the final climb of the day, the Côte du Terreur. That's a little bit shorter, 2.1 Ks at 6.4%, as we see our solo leader, Ivan Romeo of Spain, rocketing down the descent down the other side. It is one of those descents. It's not super steep, as you can see. Still piling on the power here, taking that racing line and leaning into this. And the way that he rode that climb before, we're talking about him being a power rider. He's ridden, started at least many of the big classics this year, but he's got the sort of engine that's effective over this sort of gradient, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's a really good time trialist as well, so he will not suffer too much on the descents. Of course, a solo rider versus a big peloton will always lose a bit of energy or time, but he is well suited to this kind of terrain. He's just light enough to get over the climbs, and then he's got a huge engine for on the flat. Certainly in this under-23 category, he's one of the stronger riders on this sort of terrain. I'm just wondering whether those two riders can work together to come a bit closer, but I think it's going to be difficult for those two to come any closer to Romeo, and certainly to catch him before the climb starts. So I think it might actually be just the Romeo versus the peloton, and he's got a chance here to hold on over that final climb.
He has. He's looking good. He's looking determined. He looks great on a bike. He is a taller rider, only 20 years of age. He's holding steady on the white line, taking that shorter line, shakes out both of his wrists after the tension that he would have felt on the descent. Slightly flat a bit here, still descending to the foot of the final climb of the day. This is Sunride. That's a little bit more accurate now. 10 kilometers to go now. This is stage 5 of the Tour de l'Avenir. We had a 12-rider group go clear early in the stage when we started at La Tour de Salvagny. We're heading towards the Lac d'Aiguebelay. Beautiful location in the Savoie. But it was the best placed rider in at the breakaway, Ivan Romeo of Spain, that clipped off on the lowest slopes of the penultimate climb of the day and is now soloing out in front. The situation on the road is Romeo in front. The second group on the road, Lars Kraps of Belgium and Pepijn de Reijderink, the under-23 champion of the Netherlands, just sliding onto the wheel of the Belgium there. A further 8 seconds behind Pierre Pascal-Kuip of Germany, and then Alex Segaert of Belgium a further 20 seconds back, and then the bunch another 15 or 20 seconds behind him. So it is all closing up, but with 8.9 k's to go and only a couple of kilometres of clear. Well, it looked like the Dutchman nearly went the wrong way around the roundabout, just lost the wheel there for a minute. But right now, this is Romeo's race to lose. Match the pace of the peloton on the climb, checks the gap behind, he'll see empty road. At the moment, this is looking good. He looks composed, he looks powerful, he looks stable, and he's looking at set fair for victory right now. What can he do on this final climb?
Yeah, but he's been in the breakaway the entire day, and it's been a tough day out with that temperatures that we've seen today, close to 40 degrees, maybe going in excess of 40 degrees this afternoon. He'll have been suffering this entire stage. It's just going to be about, you know, has he got enough left to hold on to that 1 minute and 20-second gap? I'm not 100% sure that's going to be the case. I think he will definitely need about 50 seconds at the bottom of that final climb, because some of those punchy GC riders are going to attack that climb full gas, trying to still pick up a stage win. And it's going to be hard to hold on to that when that group behind really explodes.
Well, this man is a man of talent. As you said, he wouldn't be riding at World Tour level, and has had one of the best race programs of any rider in this field, save for riding a Grand Tour. Only one rider has ridden a Grand Tour in this field. That's Matthew Reticello of Israel Premier Tech, riding for the American squad. But this man's looking good. There is the gap to Group 2. That's not the peloton, that's the two chasers just behind of Pepijn de Reijderink and the Belgian Lars Kraps. But looking at the sort of, I think factoring in, okay, he's been in the breakaway all day, Jens. We've got to bear that in mind. Been sitting on a bit, but clearly it was a key component part. But it's a relatively short stage, 138.3 k's. He's finished races like San Sebastian, which is 250 k's. This is a man who is used to that sort of distance. Finished 8th in the World Road Race Championships as well. Now, fatigue will be playing a part as well, especially in these hot conditions. But he's had a race program superior to most of the other riders in this field. So you'd imagine should be able to go the distance here, or at least not overly capitulate on the climb, although he isn't a pure climber. He's coming into the bottom of the final climb now, but right now looks in full flight, super stylish on a bike for a big lad. He's very, very aero. I'd say he's got a good chance, but it's certainly not over yet.
No, he definitely has a good chance, but it's not going to be the distance that does it for him. It's more going to be the fact that he's already been doing this for about 30 minutes, just riding at his maximum pace. And you know, he can probably do this pace for the remainder of the stage, but if that gap is too small, if the peloton is able to bring it down some more before the climb starts, then those climbers that just have that acceleration that can go above their limit still on that final climb, they can close gaps pretty quickly on those kinds of gradients, where Romeo is just going to have to do his own pace, sit at that probably the same pace that he's been doing up this previous climb, maybe even a little bit lower pace, because he's been going for such a long time, and those riders behind haven't done that at those accelerations, haven't sat at that threshold kind of pace. For now, they've just been sitting in the peloton, and they will have some acceleration left. They'll be able to just sprint up those 2 kilometers, and that is the worrying bit for Romeo. I don't think these two riders are going to make it. I think it's going to be between the peloton and Romeo now.
Yep, 5.8 k's to go. That little glance behind, we can't see what they've seen, of course, but we pretty much know what is behind. Although Kraps moves through to the front again, out of sight not out of mind at the moment, is our race leader, and here he is on to the final climb of the day. It's only a short one, so it's half the distance of the previous climb. 2.1 Ks, but ever so slightly steeper at 6.4%. And you are quite right, Jens. All it takes is several big accelerations from the group behind, and his lead will tumble. But his lead at the moment is 40 seconds on the two behind. It's still around about a minute, we understand, on the peloton behind. But if he gets over the top of this climb with only, 20 or 30 seconds, that should be enough to see him into the finish, because it's a downhill plummet pretty much all the way to the line at Lac de Igubelet. So constant glancing round now from Reindering. And that does suggest that the peloton aren't too far behind. It's still saying the gap is at 40 seconds here. And there is, well, this is one of the riders that was in the breakaway before. This is Pierre-Pascal Kuip, who's managed to get across the gap here and hasn't been caught by the bunch. So 5 Ks to go now, and we've only got around a kilometre to the top of this climb. So it's looking good for Romeo as we head back towards the finish again.
Yeah, I think the fact that Kuip was still able to even hold off the peloton and even catch those two riders still in between is not a great sign for the peloton. If they wanted to catch this rider, they would have had to at least catch Kuip, who was at about 50 seconds at the top of the climb, and I don't think that will have changed too much. So it's going to be, I'm not even going to say it's going to be close at this point. I think the advantage is for Romeo. Unless someone comes from the peloton with huge speed, it's going to be very difficult. And but we haven't seen what's happening in the peloton, so that's still really hard to say exactly what's going on behind there.
Well, 40 seconds, it's saying, is the gap as he gets towards the top of this climb, the Côte de Terreau. As he crests the top of the climb, he'll see this beautiful lake spreading out before him, and then he has this sinuous, twisting, irregular descent. It's not one of those descents, as I said before, that you can feel the rhythm of. It is complex. So although gravity will assist him all the way to the line, he's got to make sure that he doesn't make any unforced errors as Reindering accelerates away. But I don't think he's going to stay away for too long, because the peloton very shortly are going to emerge around that bend in the dappled sunlight. Although Reindering has found something special here, managed to jump away from the Belgian that he was with for so long, Lars Klapse. Bearing in mind that Reindering was in the breakaway as well. This is a good move by the Dutchman. Well, a strong one anyway, but there is the peloton.
He's found a huge acceleration all of a sudden. I didn't expect that was going to be in the legs anymore for Reindering, but he's making inroads on Romeo, I would assume. Peloton was about a minute at the start of the climb, so wondering how close they're going to get. But the fact that they still haven't caught Reindering isn't a great sign. I think it was one of the Irish riders at the front of the group trying to pull some riders clear maybe. But Romeo already looks like he's sort of on the plateau at the top of the climb.
It certainly looks to be that way. It's still saying 40 seconds. I'm not super trusting of these time gaps at the moment, I'll be honest with you. But there's definitely clear daylight. And Reindering just about to be caught, and it does look like it's the figure of possibly Archie Ryan actually attacking. There's one of the Mexican riders as well on the front here. Big acceleration by the man that we saw figure the other day. I think it's Isaac del Toro there. It certainly is Archie Ryan, the Irishman, looking around, heading towards EF Education Easy Post next year. I can also see Nurikar as well of Great Britain at the top. A lot of the riders up there in the general classification. Doesn't look like he's quite at the top of this climb now, unless that's one of the little plateaus on the descent. I wish we had a more accurate time gap. It is staying 40 seconds, but the descent, I think this is the top of the climb now. Finally for Romeo. There is a daylight over the top of the climb, but they're not too far behind him, I don't think, here.
No, we're seeing the same signs on the side of the road as we see with Romeo at the front. This gap is coming down quickly. I think this is Jan Christen who's coming across the gap, and he might be getting close. There is the top of the climb for our leader, but how much of a gap has he still got left? I think it's going to be down to about 20 seconds.
It looks like that's all it is. It does look like Christian. It certainly is the rider from Mexico, Isaac del Toro, as well. So he has got a little bit more of a lead. It is just around 20, maybe 25 seconds as we've seen the time gap stripped out. 3.3 Ks to go now for our solo leader, Ivan Romeo of Spain. Rides for Movistar from Valladolid. That'll be the scene of the only individual time trial. It went a little bit tight to the edge here. He's having to push it here. Accelerates out of the bend. As you can see, this is a pretty technical descent here as they plummet towards the lake. He's got to retain his composure, but also the gap isn't big enough for him to be able to fully relax.
No, he can't relax 20 seconds if some riders band together and work on this plateau. You see it's not quite flat here. Nurkar seems to be pulling this group along, but Kristen coming again from behind with speed, trying to accelerate away from the rest of the riders. It's still a pretty big group, but that group is not going to work together. So Kristen just attacks, tries to get across the gap, and he is making inroads on our solo leader, Ivan Romeo. But Romeo here through another turn, and now the descent starts. We're going to get some tight turns at the top, then a longer straight, and then a couple more tight turns that might surprise a few riders right near the bottom of this descent. It's going to be technical, it's going to be fast, and some of these riders have got the skills. Jan Kisten, for instance, a former cyclocross world champion in the juniors. So let's see how much of an inroad he can make in this descent.
Yeah, he'll definitely be using those cyclocross skills to good effect on this descent, but he's got to catch Romeo. So there is the sight of the young man from Switzerland trying to bridge across the gap to the Flying Spaniard. Remember, it looks like the threat to the overall classification has neutralized. I haven't seen Simon Dolby in that group behind, but one would imagine he'd be safely in there as we pick our way through this descent with its lefts and its rights. It's irregular cadence, and there is Romeo. I'm not too sure how accurate that the miles, well, the kilometers to go were either, so they stripped that out at the moment. And because from the top of the climb it was 4.1 Ks to go. But here we go. Christian splitting this group, descending like an absolute demon down here, made even more complicated, of course, by the irregular turns and also the dappled light as well, wreaking havoc with our abilities of the motos to stay with Romeo. But he's still got a reasonable lead of around 15 or 20 seconds. These are just estimates.
Yeah, about 15 seconds with just over a kilometer to go still for Romeo. I think with the descent that's going to remain until about 300 meters till the line. I think I'm not going to call it and say that he's got it, but if he doesn't make any mistakes, he's got a really, really good shot of getting the victory. But that not making mistakes parts is really important here, because there are a couple tight turns coming up right near the bottom of the descent.
Yeah, it's essentially a little country road. It's not a main, big engineered road at all. Crumbling road surface on the left and right, little drop-offs as well, but Romeo is doing a good job, as is the Swiss rider Christensen, but he's not making too many inroads. Well, this is nervous stuff. We're coming towards the last part of this stage. The finish line won't be too far away at all at Lac d'Aiguebelette. A beautiful day, scorchingly hot day here on stage 5 of the Tour de l'Avenir, and victory is his. Ivan Romeo of Spain, after being in the breakaway all day. Christensen just behind, but it is the day for the 20-year-old. A superb solo win, a well-timed attack. Romeo is victorious. Romeo take the stage. He can't quite believe it. Frustration for the Swiss rider as he crosses the line. And it looks like that is going to be one of the Irish riders crossing line. It wasn't Ryan, but an Irish rider just finishing there in third place as well. And the peloton scattered just behind. A dramatically reduced peloton. An attritional final couple of climbs for today's stage, held in temperatures well in excess of 40 degrees. But another thriller of a day, Jens. An absolutely brilliant stage for us today.
Yeah, Kristen just looking really angry there that he didn't get the stage win on about 7 seconds, and then the peloton being led in by the Italian champion Francesco Bussato on 11 seconds. Most of the GC favorites must have made it into that group, but I saw a couple riders that we did expect in that group just off the back of it. I think maybe the Dutch rider Tijmen Gaat was off the back, as well as I think the Luxembourg GC hope Mats Wenzel looked to be dropped just a few seconds behind, and more riders coming in now still trying to fight for time. So it's it's not over for some of these riders. They're just coming into the line as quickly as possible.
Well, there we go. Congratulations from his teammates as well. He looks pretty happy with that, in stark contrast to the frustration of Jan Christian banging his bars. Closed the gap to only 5 or 6 seconds, but of course our Spaniard could sit up and savour the moment. He'll move up a little bit in the general classification, but it's all about the stage win. Here's the moment that he took one of the biggest wins of his young career, as it cuts away to the convoy coming through. But yeah, a superb solo win. He's signed a long-term contract already with Movistar all the way through to the back end of 2025. And this man is surely going to be one to watch for the future. But it was the manner of his win, wasn't it? The patience with which he waited to go on the lower slopes of the climb. Wasn't forced to chase any of those earlier moves. And rode with real strength on those final two climbs. That was a superb solo win.
Yeah, I think he did almost everything right there, if not everything. It was an incredibly strong win there. Just a long breakaway, and then that solo, just timed it well, sat on the wheels as long as he could, and then went as hard as possible to the finish, dropped everyone in the breakaway, and finished it off. I don't think he made a single mistake out there on the road today.
No, we were talking about him, weren't we, earlier on, he's sitting on, but ultimately, when you look at, he won the race, and that's all that counts. And when you look back at what he did towards that point, all you can conclude is that he played a perfect game. Simon Dolby, you can just see in the foreground there, with the sunnies on. He should remain in the yellow jersey, as far as I can see. And it was indeed, you're quite right, Francesco Bussato, the under-23 Italian road race champion, who came in third, mistakenly, and took the upper part of his jersey for the Irish jersey, as from head on, so apologies for that, but yeah, but no time bonuses at all. Just a reminder, there are no time bonuses out on the road or on the finishing line. And if you look at the general classification already, as we head into the final 3 stage of this race, already enormously split up. We also have 3 big mountain stages to go, and 1 individual uphill time trial too. So expect the general classification to reform and reshape significantly over the coming next couple of days. So fighting for the shade there as they debrief and savour the moment. He looks full of beans, doesn't he? Full of delight. It was just the contrast, wasn't it? One man savouring one of the biggest wins, or the biggest win, I think it's fair to say, of his entire career so far. And the other man who didn't quite get it right, banging his bars in frustration. And hopefully we'll hear from Ivan Romeo in just a few moments' time. But that sets things up beautifully, I think, for the next 3 days, Jens.
Yeah, we'll have to see how well he goes in the mountains, Romeo. He isn't really known as a huge climber, but he's obviously a really strong rider, and he's able to do those longer efforts as we look at the classification of the stage today.
Indeed, Ivan Romeo takes the win ahead of Jan Christian of Switzerland. Francesco Bussato third. Nadav Reisberg, great ride by the rider from Israel. Then we have Simon Dolby, our race leader from Denmark, and then we have Rondel of France in 6th place. Hopefully the graphic will hold on for a little bit longer next time we see it. But yeah, no time bonuses at all as groups continue to roll through in these scorching conditions, maybe slightly cooler by the lake. But today's stage brought forward by 2 hours because of the ridiculously warm conditions. And I think it was definitely a good decision. But tomorrow we move up into altitude. It is a stage from Méribel to Méribel, but via the Col de Loze. We head up to well over 2,000 meters above sea level. In fact, 2,296. And the Col de la Loze brutally steep, 23.2 Ks at 7.4%. But it's the second part of the climb that is steep. Constant gradients bouncing between 9 and 11%. And the scene this year in the Tour de France You won't need too much reminding of the unfortunate capitulation of Tadej Pogačar. One of the hardest climbs, I think, in this particular region, without a shadow of a doubt. But wonderfully entertaining stage, and I think as we look back over the first 5 stages of this race, I feel quite privileged to have commentated upon it. It's the first time we've ever done it, and it's been a pleasure. And it's been a riveting race so far.
Voilà, nous sommes avec Ivan qui est en train de se rafraîchir. Ivan, incroyable victoire aujourd'hui.
Ouais, merci beaucoup.
Incredible victory.
C'était très très dur. Je pensais que c'était pas possible.
I think
le dernier
didn't think it was possible. The last 15k on my own.
Ouais.
It was really difficult. but now I'm happy.
On a une meilleure vue pour les coureurs, pour le classement général. We have a better view for general classification.
Pour moi, je pense pas. Je suis trop grand.
You're better on the classification now. I don't think so.
Je suis très content de la victoire aujourd'hui, mais je vais essayer
I'm happy with the victory today.
Coéquipier, demain sur la losse et
but I'm going to look after my teammates for tomorrow's stage. I'm happy with today. It's a Tour de l'Avenir.
Quelque chose en plus, je veux le faire aussi.
C'est un rêve de gagner.
Ouais, c'est un rêve.
It's a dream to win.
C'est incroyable, c'est incroyable.
It's incredible.
Merci, Ivan.
Another one of our famously brief but entertaining interviews there. Yeah, he doesn't think that the overall is possible now. More working for his teammates. But a big dream of his to win a stage of the Tour de l'Avenir. Lovely to see that pure joy on his face. And here is the situation on the general classification after stage 5. Simon Dolby still leads ahead of Matthias Rondel of France. Jan Christian is now in 3rd, just ahead of his teammate Robin Dons. Then we have Joseph Blackmore in 5th, Ivan Romeo in 6th, Lucas Nurikar in 7th, Axel Hüns of France in 8th, Hannes Wilch, one of the pre-race favourites from Germany there, in 9th at 48 seconds, and Francesco Bussato 3rd on today's stage, rounding out the top 10, heading into stage 6 at 50 seconds. So no real change in the general classification. A few bits of shuffling around as we look back to the opening stages. The flag drop way back in La Tour di Salvagny. So the breakaway of 12 riders dominated the day, containing the likes of Alex Sigart, Oded Kugut, Artem Schmidt was there, Ivan Romeo, the eventual winner, was in the mix. And the chase was led primarily by the French team, the Swiss, the Italians, and ultimately the Danes. A couple of splits occurring during the feed zone. The lead was maxed out at around 3 minutes, then was cut to around 2. And for the mid part of the stage, stabilised between 2 and 2.5 minutes. But as we headed into the last 50k's, several riders tried their luck off the front. Several little splits occurred, the first of which was Tim Tom Teutenberg. He tried to go clear, eventually went clear with Oded Kugut and Liam Walsh. They opened up a 30-second gap. There's the Israel rider. It looked like he was suffering with a little bit of cramp. Dropped back from the duo in front as they headed towards the first of the 2 climbs that punctuated the final phase of racing, the Col de la Cruzille. On that climb, it was Walsh that went clear on his own, but then emerging from the remnants of the breakaway was the man that posed the biggest threat on the general classification, the 20-year-old Ivan Romeo of Spain. He surged past the riders that were before him on the lower slopes of the climb. There then was a counter-attack. It was Lars Klapps, aided by Alex Sigart, one of the early riders in the breakaway, who pulled his teammate over the top of the climb. Also in the mix at that point as well, one of the final surviving riders from the breakaway, and that was Pepin Reindrink. But it was this man, tout seul as he used, that means to go alone, fought his way up the final climb of the day. A sterling effort from Jan Christian of Switzerland, buoyed perhaps by the win the previous day of Fabio Christensen. But to then the descent to the finish, it was a, well, exceptionally tactical one. Technical, nervous, but ultimately this man's nerve, this man's power held a perfect victory, the biggest victory of this young man's career. Ivan Romeo, the winner of stage 5 of the Tour de l'Avenir, just ahead of a frustrated Jan Christian of Switzerland and a very fast finishing Francesco Bussato, who just took the sprint behind. Simon Dolby there in the yellow jersey, the maillot jaune finishing safely within the fold. And here he is.
You keep the yellow jersey, it's a perfect day for you.
Yeah, it was a good day. I keep the yellow jersey, and that was pretty much the plan for today, to keep the jersey before the 3 last very hard days.
We have better view for the rider, view of the best rider for the general classification.
Yeah, I haven't seen the results yet for today, but yeah, we saw we was strong on the climbs. Jan Christian looked really strong on the last climb and got a little gap before the downhill, so yeah, he was obviously strong. Yeah.
Tomorrow, big stage with Col de la Loze.
Yeah, it's going to be very tough, but yeah, it's just amazing to have the chance to do Col de la Loze in the yellow jersey.
Thank you.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's going to be hard, that is for sure. He certainly has a very solid team around him. They're on a good day, had Anders Foldega up the road as well. And Simon Dolby looking relaxed, looking confident. He was their leader coming into this race, but tomorrow, Jens, it's fair to say, is going to be one of the sternest tests, one of the hardest climbs of the entire Tour de l'Avenir.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to see about half of the projected GC riders drop out of the GC, just because that climb is going to tell us everything. It's so steep, it's so long, that if you don't have the legs tomorrow, you're going to lose minutes, and it's just going to be the first sort of selection, and after that we'll see the tactical games played out after the mountain time trial that we'll see on Saturday morning.
Well, riders still finishing now. We're going to take our leave. Make sure you do join us tomorrow for the stage finishing atop the Col de la Loze, the first true mountaintop finish of this year's Tour de l'Avenir. It's all been about one man today, though, Ivan Romeo. There he is, taking the biggest win of his career, 20 years of age, from Spain. But for now, from me, Matt Stevens, and from Jens Dekker, it's goodbye, au revoir, and we'll see you tomorrow.